In this video, we're going to be talking about a major Arctic blast as we head into November with the coldest temperatures of the season, heavy snow, and even some snow for parts of the South. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. This is your Monday, October 25th afternoon update. And what we're looking at here is the 500 millibar on the North American view currently right now, where we've had that ridge just dominating for much of October over southeast Canada here. That's brought all the well above average temperature anomalies for the Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley that we talked about in my October forecast. There's the trough setting up over the West Coast. That's bringing all the instability and the cooler conditions and all the rain with that bomb cyclone they've had recently. And there's that severe threat later on today for the Carolina region. But as we get into that October 30th timeframe, there's definitely a noticeable change in the upper levels. We see this dominating ridge finally retreating to the north. And as it retreats to the north, it's going to allow this trough to get creeping up the East Coast to bring them more heavier rain as they end the month. But this other trough right here that's going to be setting up shop over Canada here, that's going to allow the colder air to kind of sneak under this ridge as this ridge continues to lift up to the north towards Greenland. It's going to allow this trough to sneak underneath and bring the coldest temperatures of the season for the central US, because by the time we get into that November 3rd time frame, there's the trough sneaking underneath the ridge, really flattens out by then. That allows the coldest temperatures of the season filtering into the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. So why is all this happening? So let's take a look up all the way to the north to the Teleconnections. And I pointed out the PNA, which is your Pacific North American. We've had predominantly cooler conditions for much of October out west, while the east has been well above average temperatures that I showed you because of that ridge. But all that's going to change as we head towards the beginning of November. As you can see here, currently right now on October 25th, when I'm making this video, we're negative in for the PNA. That's why we're a little bit cooler out west. But by the time we get towards the end of the month, and especially as we start November, that PNA goes positive. That brings the ridge back into the West Coast. At the same time, we have the EPO, which is your Eastern Pacific Oscillation. That's been predominantly positive for much of October. That changes in a big way and really dives southward into negative deviation levels. And all the models are kind of agreeing on this now, that by the time we get into that November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th time frame, it's going to bring the coldest air of the season as the jet stream is able to buckle. And that's going to allow the cold air to continue to filter south, and it reaches all the way down to parts of the South as well. So let's take a look at some of the temperature anomalies after we get past the end of October going into Monday, November the 1st time frame. You can definitely see the temperature anomalies in the midsection of the country are setting up shop a little bit different than what you've seen as of late. Now places into Colorado, into Denver hasn't seen terribly too much colder weather. You're going to start getting into the action. Places in Nebraska, places in Kansas, getting into parts of Minnesota as well as Missouri. Going to see those below average temperatures start to creep in your part of the country by that November 1st time frame. And then yes, we were talking about snow, not just in the higher elevations in the mountain regions. Places like Denver is finally going to see some snow, which is technically behind what they typically see this time of year. They've already typically would see some snow by then, but that's going to bring some snow by the time we get into that November 1st time frame into the Denver Metroplex, as well as places in Nebraska. Places like North Platte, Nebraska is going to start seeing some snow, going into portions of Kansas where it's going to be cold enough to snow by the time we get into that November 1st time frame. But as we transition to the 2nd, that's when it starts to really amplify and really deepen as the teleconnections start to continue to dive negative. The further negative they get, the more cold air they're going to be able to pull down. And now we're talking those 20 upwards to possibly 30 degrees below average temperature anomalies over portions of Wyoming, getting into portions of Nebraska here with those temperature anomalies of those 10 to 15 degrees below average into Kansas, into Oklahoma by now, getting into the Texas panhandle of the coldest temperatures of the season as that cold air continues to dive south, impacting Missouri, getting into Illinois, going into Wisconsin by then. And let's take a look at the actual temperatures, what they would typically look like by the time we wake up on Tuesday morning, November the 2nd. And all these purples here, yeah, that's teens and single digits setting up over Wyoming, and single digits in portions of Nebraska. So widespread 20s in Montana, the Dakotas, and Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and Iowa. As those colder temperatures continue to shift further south, those widespread 20s in Colorado, getting into even some freezing conditions by then into New Mexico, frost type levels in the Texas panhandle near 40 degrees, into Oklahoma, into the upper 30s for Missouri. As you can see, that colder air continues to drain southward with widespread 50s still showing up in the southeast. And the actual feels like temperature is obviously even colder than that, where these kind of these green shaded areas, that is an indication of it actually being feels like below zero. So this is definitely a pretty good significant Arctic blast for November standards, as you're talking below zero wind chills potentially by the time we get in that November 2nd timeframe into the Wyoming area, and even in portions of Nebraska, as all those feels like temperatures in the Texas panhandle will get into the 20s range. So there, as that continues to move south, that'll bring the snow levels south. So that'll filter into much of the foothills of Colorado by then, getting into more snow for the Denver Metroplex, and just kind of a chilly rain as you go into the afternoon on that November the 2nd timeframe, sneaking into Texas, going into Arkansas, into Missouri, into southern portions of Illinois by then. But man, it really deepens by the time we get into that Wednesday, November 3rd timeframe of those 20 and 30 degree below average temperature anomalies by then creeping all the way down into Texas. And this reaches pretty far south, guys. This is a significant shot of colder temperatures on the table for next week. Not this week. This is next week for the first week of November. And those colder temperatures will reach all the way down into portions of the southeast, with those 10 to 15 degree below average temperature anomalies in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama, all of Tennessee, going into Kentucky, into the Ohio Valley. It's not into the northeast yet. Well, you'll eventually get there as the colder air will be locked over the central US. But man, check out the temperatures as you wake up on Wednesday morning. Yeah, widespread single digit in the teens, into Wyoming, into Nebraska, into Colorado here, as those colder conditions, more 20s showing up in New Mexico, even some 30s in Arizona. Those 30s will start showing up in Oklahoma area. Widespread 20s in Kansas and in Missouri here, with freezing temperatures by then, as that colder air continues to push down to the south. Widespread 40s for much of Texas and central Texas, as those 50s kind of hang on for down in the Houston Metroplex. But there's your feels like temperatures by the time Wednesday morning rolls around. It pulls all the way into the Texas panhandle of almost low 20s feels like. So that's definitely a significant shot of colder air. And all these areas in red, that is indication to show you where it's going to be, feels like teens and 20s for a good chunk of the country. So this is definitely the coldest temperatures of the season, and a significant shot of colder air for November standards. But what's most impressive is that snow, as it really rapidly deepens further south. Now we're talking places like New Mexico is going to start seeing some snow, and even the Texas Panhandle. Snow flurries will fly, and some of these will start to accumulate with multi-inch snow type levels as we get into that Wednesday morning, November 3rd timeframe. And some of that snow actually may be creeping into Wichita Falls and possibly the Lubbock area. As that colder air continues to drain south, it's probably going to be just a chilly rain for Austin and San Antonio and the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the bigger cities, mainly confined to the Texas Panhandle. But yeah, not only are you going to see your first freeze of the season, but you're also going to see the coldest temperatures and even some snow as far south as the Texas Panhandle by the time we get into that Wednesday, November 3rd timeframe. And there's the widespread temperatures as you wake up Thursday, November the 4th. Of all those reds showing up on the map, of those your indications where you're going to start to see those 20s or even lower temperatures, and that will finally creep into portions of the mid-Atlantic as well as the Northeast as well. And those 30s will start creeping in all the way down into the Southeast. So places like Atlanta, Georgia could be waking up by the time, you know, that November 4th rolls around to upper 30s into your neck of the woods, as that colder air will continue to drain south and continue to dump snow into portions of Colorado, into New Mexico here, as well as the Texas Panhandle, and then widespread chilly rain for the rest of you in Texas, but definitely a significant shot of colder air. And there's the snow over the next 10 days. A lot of this is going to fall next week into the higher elevations, or this week into the higher elevations. But as we get to that Monday, Tuesday time frame, some of that snow will creep into portions that we have not seen snow yet, into Denver, into North Platte, Nebraska here, get into portions of Kansas, and all the way down into Colorado, going into Denver, as well as New Mexico here, and even northern portions of Arizona, into Nevada, into Utah, and then obviously into Texas as well, into the Texas Panhandle, and maybe as far south as the Wichita Falls area, and maybe even as far south as the Lubbock area. We'll start to see some snow. I'm not expecting too much snow, if anything, for portions of the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, but as most of this colder air, the coldest air, the coldest temperature anomalies air will be mainly focused over the central part of the U.S., reaching all the way down into Texas. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video and definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.